Peace, Israel. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. The title of today's lesson is You and Your Seed. Once again, today's lesson is entitled You and Your Seed. Now, the reason for this lesson is because somehow our people who have been led astray, who have been lied to, have taken a hold of vanity, things where there is no profit. There's no profit therein. And somehow they have been told that everyone is Israel and the whole world or everyone is a spiritual Israel. So what we're going to do is we're going to backtrack through the records, okay, like we normally do at this channel, and we will establish clearly through proof, through validation, and through this word that the Most High established his covenant through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are of a seed line, and that the Most High makes a specific distinction between those families, that bloodline, and any other family on the face of the earth. So this is a bloodline of people, their seed, their offspring, their posterity. And there is no such thing as a spiritual Israel. Because you've heard this nonsense about, oh, there is no Jew or Gentile and blah, blah, blah. New Testament rubbish. So we will go into this record and establish that that is indeed a lie. It is false. It is contrary to the Most High's word. So brace yourselves. Don't turn to the left or to the right because you don't want to get hit in the mouth. Let's get ready to go. We will start off now with Genesis chapter 15. Genesis chapter 15. And we will start with verse 5. We are establishing that the house of Israel is a seed line, genetics, and no one can enter that seed line ever. It is a covenant the Most High have with this specific man and his seed. All right, now, starting off Genesis chapter 5, Genesis chapter 15, and we will deal with verse 5. And verse 5 of Genesis chapter 15 reads, And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now towards heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. So Abraham is told to look into the heavens, and he's to look at the stars. This is why his name was still Abram. Look at the stars. If you can count them, and of course he couldn't. There were numerous, too many in number, too great in number. The Most High is saying, So shall your seed be. So shall your offspring, your posterity. That's how many children you're going to have, and children's children, etc. All right, now let's move over, same chapter. We will move to verse 13 of Genesis chapter 5. And verse 13 reads, And he said unto Abraham, Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So Abram is being told that his seed, his posterity, will be in a strange land and in servitude. Now, let's move to Genesis chapter 17. Genesis chapter 17, and we will read verse 7 through 10. And verse 7 of Genesis chapter 17 reads, And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a strong one unto thee and to thy seed. Most High once again is speaking to Abram. He's letting him know, I will establish my covenant between me and you, Abram, and between your seed after you. your children after you in their generations. This is throughout the generations. And it will be an everlasting covenant, meaning that covenant is made and it's forever unbreakable between Abraham and his lineage. Okay? Verse 8. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their strong one, or their God. So the Most High is letting Abram know, hey, look, I will establish a covenant between me and you. Not only between me and you, but I will establish it with your seed after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant. And I will be a strong one unto you and to your children. Okay? And I will give you this land. And this land will be given to you and your children after you. Verse 9. And Yah said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant. Therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. So Abraham is to keep his covenant, and so are his children. They are to keep that covenant. It is established with that bloodline, with that family. Verse 10. This is my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and your seed after you. Okay? It reads here in my book, between me and you and thy seed after thee. But it's between me and you and my seed after you. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. Okay, so this is the covenant of circumcision that was established with Abraham. Now, we will go to Genesis chapter 17. We'll move down 2 verses. Okay, and this way it can be established that there's a clear distinction between the seed of Israel coming from Abraham and a distinction between them and any other people on the earth, okay, or any other family. So verse 12 makes this very clear in the very same chapter. So we'll move to verse 12 of Genesis chapter 17. And verse 12 reads, and he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. He that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. So he's speaking specifically to Abraham, letting him know clearly that there's a difference between who needs to be circumcised that are of his seed and what the stipulations are for those who are not of his lineage at all, who are not of his genealogy, who are not of his posterity, who are not of his seed. So that clearly indicates to you that everyone is not Israel. Everyone is not the seed of Abraham. Okay, so now that is to be established. Now, let's move down, same chapter, and we will move to verse 19 of Genesis chapter 17. And verse 19 reads, and Yah said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, unbroken forever, and with his seed after him. So all the covenants and the promises that were made to Abraham, those covenants are now established with Isaac, who is the direct seed line of Abraham. And the Most High is letting Abraham know, once your son Isaac is born, I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. That's all his children and the generations down the line. Now, let's move over to verse 22 of Genesis. We're going to walk through Genesis, take you all the way up through to Isaiah, and let you see this is indeed a seed line, and everyone is not Israel, and there's no such thing as a spiritual Israel. It's nonsense. Okay? Now, Genesis chapter 22, and we will read verse 17 and verse 18. Genesis chapter 22 and verse 17 reads, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. So we're beginning to understand here, this is a seed line, okay? Understanding that this is established with a man's son, his son's sons, etc. Okay? So this is to put into context once again the seed line. Verse 18, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So, through Abraham's children, the other families of the earth will be blessed, for the simple fact that Abraham obeyed the voice of the Most High. He was obedient. Okay? Now, let's move to Genesis chapter, we're going to go to 21. Let's back up to 21. Genesis chapter 21, and we will read verse 12. Genesis chapter 21 and verse 12 reads, and Yah said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah has said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called. All right. Abraham was grievous because Sarah cast out the bondwoman and her son, who would be Hagar, pretty much gave Ishmael, mother, the boot, sent them away. And it was a grievous thing to Abraham for the simple fact that Ishmael is his firstborn. So the Most High is letting him know clearly, Abraham, do not be grievous for this thing. Because though Ishmael is your firstborn, I'm not establishing my covenant with him. My covenant will be established with Isaac. So don't let this thing be too grievous unto you. Because my covenant is not established with Ishmael anyhow. It will be established with Isaac. Okay, so let this not be a grievous thing unto you. Hearken unto your wife. It's pretty much what he's being told. Okay? Now, so we understand seed line, and the seed line, everything is being moved from Abraham to Isaac. It did not go to Ishmael, though Ishmael is the firstborn, okay? Most High did not establish a covenant with Ishmael. The covenant was established with Isaac. Now, at verse 13, Ishmael is given a noteworthy mention. Verse 13 reads, and also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. So the Most High did promise Abraham that, kings and queens, etc., will come from his loins, and that his posterity, his children, will be the sand of the sea. But we see clearly here that the covenant, all the promises that were given to Abraham, those covenants will be established with his seed through Isaac. But since the covenant was already made, that all of Abraham's seed will be able to multiply and be blessed. We see here where Ishmael will make a nation. The Most High will make a nation of him simply because he is Abraham's seed. So he will be made a nation by default. Nothing special about him one way or the other. Okay? So because he is Abraham's seed, he will be made a nation. However, the covenant is established with Isaac. All right. Next, we will move over to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25. Matter of fact, let's go to Genesis chapter 24. Let's go to 24 first, 24 and 7. And then we'll come back. Genesis chapter 24. And we will deal with verse 7. Genesis chapter 24 reads, Yah of heaven Genesis chapter 24, verse 7. Verse 7. Okay? And it reads, Yah of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land. He shall send his angel before thee. So it is being made plain that way the house of Israel, through Abraham, through Isaac, and then it will come through Jacob, to where that land will be established with the seed line of those men. Okay, so we will see clearly, and those of you who are in the book, you already know that indeed that promise was fulfilled, because Israel's seed, or Jacob's seed, did indeed inherit that landmass. Okay, so we're aware of that. So we're just showing you the establishment of the seed line through lineage, genealogy. No spiritual Israel or no foolishness like that. This is established through a man and his children, his bloodline, his posterity, his heritage. No strangers. Now, we will go to chapter 25, verse 5. Genesis chapter 25, and we will deal with verse 5. And verse 5 reads of Genesis chapter 5, And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. Isaac is the son of Abraham. Through Isaac, the Most High said he will establish his covenant with Isaac. So what you have here is the son taking the inheritance of his father. He is about to inherit that which his father has. Abraham had taken his other sons and had given them gifts and sent them away. However, he whose seed was called, who is Isaac, who the covenant will be established through him and his seed, he was given that which Abraham his father had. So he inherited that of his father. So you understand that, because with his seed was the covenant established. So says the Most High. Okay, now we will move to Genesis chapter 26. Coming through Genesis chapter 26, we will read verse 3, 4, and 5. Once again, we are establishing that this is a seed line of people, and there is no such thing as spiritual Israel. It is nonsense. All right, chapter 26, verse 3 reads, Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. So the Most High is speaking to Isaac, letting Isaac know, look, dwell right here, because this is the land that I told your father that his seed will possess. And that would be you, Isaac, because through you I will establish the covenants that I had with your father Abraham. Seed line, posterity, genetics, genealogy. So you understand that. Verse 4, And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven. Same thing he told Abraham. And will give thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So, through the seed of Isaac will all the nations, or the other families of the earth, be blessed. So you understand that, okay? Because that is the seed through Abraham, through Isaac. That is the seed which Yah hath blessed. Okay? Now, we will read verse 5 just for edification and to strengthen the men of Israel. All the men of Israel need to take heed to this. Verse 5. Verse 5 reads, because that Abraham obeyed my voice. Abraham walked in the confines of the Most High's law and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So I want you to understand that Abraham commanded his house. So the house of Israel, our males, have to learn how to do this, have to turn to the Most High with their whole heart and their whole soul and command their house. So to the men of Israel that are listening to this, are you able to command your house? Are you running your house? Are you able to tell your wife and your daughter to come out of those pants, to wear skirts, to observe the law, statutes, judgments, and precepts of the Most High, to not wear mixed linen and things of the like? So the men of Israel are to stand up within their own houses and to command their families. And if you're unable to do this, you certainly will perish, because a man must take control of his house as it pertains to these laws. That is just for edification's sake. Now we'll move down to we'll jump to chapter 28. We're going out of chapter 28. Once again, we're establishing that seed line. We're in Genesis chapter 28, and we will read verse 4. Verse 4 of Genesis chapter 28 reads, and give thee the blessings of Abraham to thee and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which Yah gave unto Abraham. So, we're seeing clearly here, Isaac is being told, we're in Genesis chapter 28, verse 4, that the Most High will give the blessings of Abraham to his son Isaac and to Isaac's children with him, that they may inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger. Same thing he told Isaac's father Abraham. So all that Abraham had and all the promises that were made to Abraham, those promises are carried over to his son Isaac. So we understand that. And this is not some stranger who just came out the blue talking about, I'm spiritual Isaac, or something crazy, spiritual Israel, or some nonsense like that. Okay? So we understand how those blessings are being moved from one generation to another through a man's posterity, through his lineage, through his seed. All right? Now, we will jump to Genesis chapter 32. Genesis chapter 32. Genesis chapter 32, and we'll read verse 12. We will read verse 12. We are establishing that the house of Israel is a bloodline of people, a seed line of people, and there's no such thing, and I repeat, no such thing as a spiritual Israel. It's garbage. Now, chapter 32, and we'll read verse 12. We are in Genesis. Verse 12 reads, and thou saidest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. So, Jacob, his seed will be as the sand of the sea, cannot be numbered or measured. Israelites are everywhere. Excuse me. So let that be established. Now, let's jump to chapter 35. Chapter 35, and we'll read verse 12 of chapter 35 in Genesis. And verse 12 reads, and the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. All right, so let's establish that. We have read where Abraham was promised a specific land, him and his seed. We read where Isaac inherited that same covenant, to where it was promised to Isaac that he would inherit that land, him and his seed. Now we're dealing with Jacob, who is the son of Isaac. And Jacob is being told that he would inherit that land. Same land Abraham was told that he would inherit. So we done went through three men. Same seed line, same posterity. From Abraham to Isaac, now to Jacob. Same promise being established with all three of these men through their generations and their seed lines. Let me read that again. We're dealing with Abraham, Isaac. Now we're dealing with what's promised to Jacob. Same thing that was promised to his father Isaac. Same thing that was promised to Isaac's father Abraham. And the land, once again, this is Genesis chapter 35, verse 12. And the land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, the land that I gave your father and your grandfather, Jacob, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. So he's telling Jacob, the land that I gave your father Isaac, and the land that I gave your grandfather Abraham, I'm going to give that land to you, Jacob, and to your children after you. How do you figure this is some kind of spiritual Israel? What kind of nonsense is that? Most High is establishing right here that this is established between a bloodline. He has a covenant with them throughout their generations. It's an established covenant forever. And then some clowns in something called some New Testament, where there's no such thing, is going to come and tell you that no, it's everybody. You're grafted in. It's a spiritual Israel. You can't find that here. You can't spiritually become a black man, quote unquote black man, can't spiritually become a Chinese man. It's nonsense. So we're going to establish through this script, through the text, we're going to go through these scrolls, and we're going to establish that this is nonsense, and we're going to knock down these walls of untempered mortar, lies, okay, vanities. We will knock them down. Now, let's go to Genesis 45. Genesis chapter 45. Genesis chapter 45, we will read verse 7. Now we're going to deal with Joseph, who is one of the 12 boys of Jacob, or Israel. All right, Genesis chapter 45, and we will read verse 7. And verse 7 reads, And Yah sent me before you to preserve you a posterity, seed line, children, to preserve your children, to preserve your lineage in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. This is Joseph. Joseph is one of the 12 boys. As you know, he was sold into Egypt. So his brothers became fearful that, hey, now that our father has passed on, or they're actually understanding here that, oh, this is our brother that we sold into captivity. Man, he's going to make us pay for this. So he is reiterating to his brothers, he said, look, though you sold me into captivity, this was the Most High's doing. I was sent here. This was meant to be. In me being here in this position, I am able to preserve the posterity of Jacob, our father, or Israel, our father. His line through Joseph will be preserved. Hope you got that. So Joseph, being the head man in Egypt, his position is what allowed all of Israel's children, who are Joseph's brothers, to come into the land and procure rations during the time of the dearth, during the time of the great famine. And Joseph was in charge of all the food. So he's letting his brothers know, look, I'm in this position so I can preserve you and your children. So don't feel too guilty for what you have done. This was meant to be. The Most High sent me here to preserve the seed of you and my father. So Joseph's purpose was to preserve the seed line, the house of his father Israel. It's a lot of information right there. All right. And once again, it was to preserve posterity, lineage. Okay? Now let's jump to Genesis chapter 45. And we'll read verse 10. Actually, we are in 45, so let's just go down. We'll go down 3 verses. Genesis chapter 45, we'll read verse 10. And verse 10 reads, And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. Now, this is the house of Israel dwelling in the land of Goshen. So we see now where this family has now moved, or getting ready to move from where they were into the land of, from the land of Canaan. They're getting ready to move now into the land of the land of Goshen, which is in Egypt. And this is a family. This is a bloodline, all from one man. There's no spiritual anything in the midst of them. Okay? There's no spiritual Israelite in there. They're all of one seed line. They're all from one man. Okay? So let's get this clear. All right? Now, Genesis, I want to make sure this is what I wanted. Let me see here. Let me pause. Indeed, that is exactly what I wanted, so it can be established that when Joseph spoke here in Genesis chapter 45, verse 10, he's saying clearly that thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children. So you understand that. Thy children's children. We're dealing with seed line. We're dealing with posterity. Now, let's go to Genesis chapter 46. And we will cover verse 6 and 7. We're moving through Genesis. That way we can establish that this is a bloodline. When I'm finished with this lesson, there will be no doubt in your mind that spiritual Israel is a lie, is a myth taught to you by your enemies, because I will go through this book and you will be able to validate without a shadow of a doubt that the house of Israel has always been a seed line, will always be a seed line, and no one at no time can graft themselves into this seed line. It's impossible. And no one can become a spiritual genetic being of another group of people. Okay, so that's what we're trying to establish here to kind of quell that nonsense. Genesis chapter 46, we will deal with verse 6 and 7. And verse 6 reads, And they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. So we just discussed Joseph. Joseph was in Egypt. The famine hit. His brothers came down to get rations. He told his brother, look, don't be mad because you sold me here into Egypt. I was sent here to preserve you. Now go tell my father in the land of Canaan that I am alive. I am the head man in Egypt. Take mules, take rations for the trip back. Go get my father. Go get all of your children and bring them here down into the land of Goshen. I will give you the best of the land, and there will be no lacking for food here. So that was what took place. Now, as we read here in chapter 46 of Genesis, chapter 46, verse 6 reads, And they took their cattle and their goods. So that's Joseph's brother, all of the house of Israel, the 11 of them. Okay? And now they're leaving the land of Canaan, getting ready to go down to where Joseph is in Egypt. And it says what Jacob came with. Remember, Jacob and Israel is the same man, synonymous. So what did he come with when he came from Canaan to Egypt? Let's read the latter part of that verse. Jacob and all his seed with him. All his children. That means his children, his grandchildren, and whomever, and his grandchildren's children, if they had any such thing at the time. So it's a man and his seed. There are no strangers in the midst of this bunch. Okay? Now, let's read verse 7 so you can understand what came. His sons and his sons' sons with him. His daughters and his sons' daughters. And all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. This is the house of Israel moving from the land of Canaan into the land of Goshen, Egypt. There's no spiritual Israelite in this bunch. Every Israelite here is by bloodline. They are born Israelites. You cannot be an Israelite by conversion. You cannot be an Israelite by any other means but by birth. Period. Genealogy, DNA, posterity, direct lineage, a bloodline. So this makes clear here who Jacob brought when he came to Egypt. He brought his posterity with him, all of his offspring, his sons' sons, etc. So you understand that. Verse 46, chapter 46 still, we're going to move on to verse 26. Still in chapter 46 of Genesis, and we move into verse 26. Verse 26 of Genesis chapter 46 reads, and all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins. Let me stop right there. Your loins, your phallus, your penis, your seed, sperm. I hope you understand that. Let me reread the verse. Genesis chapter 46, verse 26. All the souls, let me stop there. When people hear the word souls, they are thinking something that's not tangible. You can't grab a hold of it. Souls mean bodies. That's it. People get soul and spirit confused. The spirit that's within my body right now that's speaking to you, if I drop dead, it will be removed out of my body, returned back to the Most High who gave it. That will be the end of me. I will live on through my seed, my posterity, through my children. That's how I live on. But I'd be dead and I would be no more. So the spirit within me is exactly that, the spirit. The body is the soul, it's a person. So when you read here all the souls, you can also say all the persons or all the people. So the soul is not that which is intangible. So folks get the soul and the spirit confused. These souls are people. These are bodies, persons. Okay? Let's deal once again. Genesis chapter 46, verse 26. And all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons' wives, all the souls were 66. That's 66. Okay? Let's read verse 27 just because. And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were two souls, two persons, two people. So souls is not spirit. Soul is people. In my house, there lives three souls. Me, my wife, and my daughter. So you get that. Okay? Once again, verse 27. And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were two souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. So of the house of Jacob, or of the house of Israel, 70 of that family, all the people, 70 persons, came from Goshen, came from the land of Canaan into Egypt, into Goshen. So the house of Israel was 70 strong when we came in to the land of Goshen in Mizraim, which is Egypt. All right. So the 70 people that came, not one of them was a spiritual Israelite. They were all Israelite by bloodline. If you ask them who's your father, they could say my father is such and such and such and such and such, and they would link all the way up to Jacob. You understand that, right? So there's no such thing as somebody in the midst that they've never seen before, and they ask them, "Hey man, who are you?" "Oh man, I'm a spiritual Israelite." They run him up out of that camp. Y'all need to stop believing this foolishness. All right, now let's deal with Genesis chapter 48, and we will read verse 11. Once again, we're establishing that the spiritual Israelite and a spiritual Israel and all that nonsense is nonsense. Okay. Genesis chapter 48, verse 11. And it reads, And Israel said unto Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, Yah hath shown me also thy seed. Once again, Joseph is in Egypt. He's the top man. Nothing moves in Egypt without his say-so. So his father is brought from Canaan to Egypt. All 70 souls, persons. And they're all connected by bloodline, genealogy, DNA. So Israel, who is Jacob, is telling his son Joseph, whew, I never thought I'd see your face, son. Never thought I'd see your face. But I'm seeing your face, and the Most High has blessed me to where I can see your seed. I've met Manasseh. I've met Ephraim. I'm able to see your children. I can see your seed. So he was really overjoyed and blessed to see the son that he thought had been killed, right? And he lived long enough to see that son and to see the seed of that son. And to see his son's seed is to see his own seed, because they are of his bloodline. You are your father. You are his genetics. Hope you grabbed a hold of that one. All right, now, let's move Genesis chapter 48. Still in that chapter, we're going to move to verse 19. And verse 19 reads, And his father refused and said, I know it, my son. I know it. He also said, become a people, and he also shall be great. Let me read that. Verse 19 of Genesis chapter 48. Verse 19 reads, And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. This is when Israel was blessing his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Manasseh is the younger, Ephraim is older. Okay? So what's happening here, you've got the old man. At this point, Israel is an old man, so he doesn't see as good as he normally do. or normally would have had he been younger. So he puts his hand on his grandsons and he's getting ready to bless them. He's blessing the sons of Joseph. Joseph is the head man in Egypt. So as Israel puts his hands upon his grandsons to bless them, Joseph is sitting back looking at his two sons about to get blessed. And the right hand is supposed to be on the eldest, okay, on the firstborn. So he was displeased that his father was giving the blessings to the younger Ephraim instead of the older Manasseh. So Joseph was trying to correct his dad Israel, say, hey dad, Ephraim is the youngest, Manasseh is the oldest. So he's trying to get him to switch his hands. And he's like, no, that's not the way this is supposed to go. So Joseph was displeased that his firstborn didn't get the blessings of the firstborn. But his father Israel knew, hey, look, no, that's not how this is supposed to go. I'm not incorrect in doing this thing. I know what I'm doing. If you've read the story, if you're familiar with Ephraim and Manasseh and their blessings, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't been in this book, you need to get to reading, because if you're not familiar with this instance, what I've just said, this went straight over here. Okay? So you have to get to reading. Don't skip any pages. Don't skip any names. Okay? So now, it says here in verse 19, let's reread that. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Let's jump down to verse 20, just because. For clarity, for edification's sake. And he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, Yah made thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Once again, Ephraim is younger. Manasseh is older. But when their grandfather blessed them, he set the youngest one above the eldest one, above the firstborn. So I wanted to read that so I can clarify and establish what I just said in plain English. So my goal here when I read and I do these lessons is to do a few things. Number one, read the scroll. Read the text. Two, explain it to you in everyday English so that you may be able to better grasp it. Okay? So we have established this portion here. Now we will go to, we've already read verse 19. Let's now jump to Genesis chapter 49, verse 28. Genesis chapter 49, and we will read verse 28. Genesis chapter 49, verse 28. All right. And verse 28 reads, and all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this it is it that their father spake unto them and blessed them. Everyone according to his blessing, he blessed them. So, understanding that these are the 12 tribes, the 12 families of Israel, who is Jacob. All 12 of these tribes are directly linked via genealogy, via DNA, via sperm, posterity. No such thing as any of these 12 tribes or anyone in them. They're not in here because I'm a spiritual Israelite. Get out of here with that nonsense. Now, let's go ahead and jump to Leviticus. We will move to Leviticus. Leviticus chapter 15, verse 16. We're going to cover 5 verses in Leviticus, and then we're going to come back to Exodus to finish this lesson. All right, so let's jump to Leviticus chapter 15, verse 16. Leviticus chapter 15, and we will deal with verse 16. And verse 16 reads, "And if any man's seed, sperm, of copulation go out from him, then he shall wash his flesh in water, and be unclean until the even." Okay, I'm coming here to establish with you clearly so you know seed equals sperm. Seed equal offspring. Seed equals DNA lineage. Seed equal posterity. Seed does not equal somebody being spiritually you or spiritually of you. So what this is saying here, on a side note, this is for edification to the males of the house of Israel, and teach this to your sons, because this is in the Most High's law. When dealing with sexual matters, should any sperm come from you during any time of sexual matters, once you have ejaculated or any sperm is released from you at any time, you are to wash yourself. You're not to lay down in it. You're not to wait till the morning after any sexual matters and sperm have left your person. You are to wash yourself, and you are to be unclean until the evening, until it gets dark. And when the new day begins, when it gets dark, that's when you're clean again. So if you're going to walk after the Most High's law and do that which is right in his sight, when you lay down with your wife and your seed comes out of your loins, what you are to do once those actions are completed, you are to go and wash yourself. You are to take a shower, you and your wife. If you're laying down with a woman, she better be your wife. That's for edification's sake. And so I will read it again. Leviticus chapter 15, verse 16. "And if any man's seed, his sperm, of copulation go out from him, at any time should your sperm leave your body, then he shall wash all his flesh in water." You take a shower and be unclean until the evening. That's why going into the temple, the priests are not to come to their wives. That's why on certain holy convocations, you're not to engage in sexual matters. Because once your seed go forth from your person, you are unclean until the next day. And when your seed comes forth out of you, you and your wife are supposed to take a shower shortly thereafter. That's for the men of Israel, and that's for the women of Israel. If you are a woman of Israel and your husband don't know it, the next time you lay down with him, you tell him, we are to take a shower. Take him in this book and show it to him. That way, if he thinks you're talking crazy, you can validate it with these scrolls. Now, let's move on to Leviticus chapter 15. We're still in 15. We're going to move down 2 verses. 2 verses takes us down to Leviticus chapter 15, and we're at verse 18. "The woman also with whom man shall lie, with seed of copulation," that's sperm, "they shall both bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening." So what we've just read is what I've just said before in plain English. So what I've just said can be validated in this book. Now, let's move to verse 32 of the very same chapter. We're establishing what seed is. That way no one is confused. All right. Going down to verse 32 of Leviticus chapter 15. And verse 32 reads, "Thus shall ye separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, that they die not in their uncleanness, when they defile my tabernacle that is among them." Now, we're going to move down to verse 32, which is the verse that I really want. "This is the law of him that has an issue, and of him whose seed goeth from him, and is defiled therewith." Once again, as we have read at verse 18 and 19 of this very same chapter, if your seed go forth from you, you are unclean. And the law for those whose seed has gone forth from them, the law is you are to clean yourself. You are to bathe in water, you and your wife, and you will be unclean until evening. That has been established. Now, let's jump to Leviticus chapter 20, and we will deal with verse 2. Leviticus chapter 20, and we will deal with verse 2 through 4. We are establishing that your seed is your posterity. Your seed is your direct heritage. Your seed is your sperm. Your seed are your children. Your seed is a specific DNA lineage. Okay? Now, Leviticus chapter 20, and we will read verse 2 through 4. And verse 2 reads, "Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel," when the Most High is speaking, he's speaking to the children of Israel, a bloodline of people. He is not speaking to everyone. So this, we're all spiritual Israel, is nonsense. We're all the children of God is nonsense. Okay? I will read this again. Verse 2 of Leviticus chapter 20. "Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel," a bloodline. We have just read this. "Whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel." Let me stop there. "Whoever it may be that is of the children of Israel, of the congregation of Israel, of the seed of Israel," just different words to mean the same thing, a bloodline of people specifically, "or of the stranger that sojourns with them." So understand, the house of Israel dwells in a specific area. They are a bloodline of people, but they may be strangers that dwells with them. Those strangers that dwells in the midst of Israel are not Israelites. Let me say that again. They are not Israelites, though they may dwell in the midst of Israel. They are strangers, and they will always be strangers, even in the latter days when we are established and the third temple is built. When we are allocated our lands and we return to our former estates, the landmass that we were given originally, there will be strangers of the nations who will take a hold of the Most High's law and will dwell in the midst of Israel. And these strangers will have to follow after the same law that we follow. There will be one law, the same law that we have to obey, so will the stranger that dwells or sojourns with us. He will also, him and his children, have to obey it. Not only that, as we are allocated land, the stranger that dwells with us, we are to also allocate him his land. So the stranger is forever a stranger, even in the latter days. He doesn't become an Israelite. He is not of our bloodline. Remember that. Let's reread verse 20, chapter 20, verse 2 again. Thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the stranger that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, false god, idol, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. All right, let's deal with any Israelite or any stranger that deals with the house of Israel. If he, the Israelite, or he, the stranger, shall take of their seed, their children, and offer it to this idol, that individual will be put to death. Now, our people in these western lands, the house of Israel, takes their children and get them baptized. That is the same thing. You're taking your seed, your offspring, your posterity, and you're handing it over to devils. What are devils? Devils are idols. I've made that plain already through all these lessons on this channel. So devils are nothing but false gods. They're idols. So we're instructed clearly that we're not to take our seed, our offspring, and offer it up to in any ways to idols, to devils, to false deities, or to deity of any kind. So you're to keep that in mind. Now, we're going to go to verse 3. And I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given of his seed unto Molech, and to defile my sanctuary, and to profane my holy name. So every time you decide, I'm going to have my child christened, I'm going to have my child baptized, what you're doing, you're taking your seed and you're offering it up unto devils. You're offering it up unto deities that the Most High had never given the house of Israel. I have said it before, I will say it again. You cannot look in this book from Genesis to Malachi. These are real prophets. When you look up the word prophets or books of the prophets, you will not find anyone named John, Luke, Mark, and whatever those chumps are in the back. Those are not prophets. Neither are they in the books of the prophets. So you want to read real prophets in the real word from the Most High. You want truth. Genesis to Malachi is where you'll find it. So you're clear on that. Now let's finish up with verse 4. And if the people of the land do anywise hide their eyes from the man when he goeth of his seed unto Molech, and kill him not, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off, and all that go a whoring after him to commit whoredom with this false god. So what it's saying here clearly is, Most High said that anytime we catch an Israelite, or anytime we catch someone of the nations that dwell with us, and they are handing over their babies, their offspring, their seed, their posterity, over to these deities, we're to kill them. That's plain English. And this is to be done when we're in the land, of course. So, that's the strict commandment. The judgment is death. Now, any Israelite that knows of an Israelite that's doing this thing and decides, you know what, that's my favorite uncle. I don't want to kill my uncle. So, I'm going to turn my face and act like I didn't see that he took his son and baptized him and turned him over to this false god. Then the Most High said clearly, anyone that does this, that will not enforce this judgment, he said, I'll set my face against that man and against his house. So when you start playing with the Most High, and I've told you on many occasions, the Most High is not to be provoked. This is not Santa Claus. When you walk contrary to instruction, that leads to your own destruction. And the Most High will deal with you and your seed. That's your family, your offspring. So be mindful when you decide to start walking contrary to this law. It doesn't affect just you, it affects generations after you. We're to be mindful of that. All right? So we read there clearly what the Most High will set his face against you when you decide you want to commit whoredoms with these idols of these many nations. All right, now we're going to touch on the last one in Leviticus. We're going to go to Leviticus 22, and we will read verse 3 and 4. Leviticus chapter 22, and we will read verse 3 and verse 4. Leviticus chapter 22, verse 3 reads, Say unto them, whosoever he be of all your seed among your generations, that goeth unto the holy things, which the children of Israel hallow unto Yah, having his uncleanness upon him, that soul shall be cut off from my presence. I am Yah. Most High speaking to Aaron. Aaron is the priest. All the priests of the Most High can only come out of one man, and that one man is Aaron. You go into a seminary school or any other school of religion does not make you a priest, a pastor, or anything related to the Most High. You cannot be a priest of the Most High, period, or one of his direct ministers, unless you are of the posterity of the seed of Aaron. So, all you women preachers out there, step down. You are out of order. And anyone that's following them, you are out of order as well. The priesthood is an office established forever between Aaron and his sons, his seed. So you understand that. Now, this verse speaks clearly to the priest. Any priest that is unclean and comes and touch the holy things, i.e., you have your seed of copulation come out before you, then you decide you're going to go up in this temple, in the Most High's house, or you want to drink some wine or something. You do anything that causes you to be unclean, to defile yourself with a dead body or anything of the sort, and you touch the hallowed things from the children of Israel, Most High will cut that priest off. That's what it's discussing here. Now, verse 4 reads, What man soever of the seed of Aaron, you cannot be a priest of the Most High unless you are of the seed of Aaron. You got to be a son of Aaron. That's a bloodline. You don't go to school and be a priest of the Most High. You are born that, like an Israelite. You don't become spiritual Israel. You can't become a spiritual Israelite. You are an Israelite by birth, by genealogy, by bloodline, by DNA, and there's no other way. Now, let me continue with verse 4. And what man soever of the seed of Aaron is a leper or hath a running issue, he shall not eat of the holy things until he be clean. And whoso toucheth anything that is unclean by the dead, or a man whose seed goeth from him. So we just discussed that. I said the same thing previously in regular English. If your seed go forth from you, Or if you defile yourself by dealing with a dead person, that priest is unclean. He can't go onto the hallowed things. He can't go into the Most High's temple unclean, or he'll be cut off. Okay? So, we have established a couple of things thus far. Number one, the house of Israel is a seed line. There's no such thing as a spiritual Israelite. Doesn't exist. And we're not all spiritual Israel. The Most High makes a clear distinction between his people Israel and every other people on the earth. And his people Israel are of a bloodline. Genealogy. That's why in this book, they list genealogy in this book. It's a bloodline. It is not, I can say, sing and dance, say a prayer, spin around, and all of a sudden, I just transformed myself into another people's bloodline. It's nonsense. And you should not believe it, number one. You have to go into this book and read it. And it can be clearly established that spiritual Israel is nothing but a myth. Now, let's go back to Exodus. This lesson is going to be a bit lengthy. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We've got about 13 or 14 more places to go. And then we'll finish this lesson. But when I do these lessons, I don't want to do them half-hearted. I want to make sure that I take you through the proper steps that we can connect the dots, that you can understand clearly when you hear spiritual Israel, it's nonsense. And you are to correct anyone that says this nonsense. And if you don't feel you're knowledgeable enough to correct them, send them a link to this video so they can stop that nonsense. Let's go to Exodus chapter 1. We will knock down vain imaginations, all these lies we've been told. The Most High keeps waking up early and sending his messengers to make the crooked way straight. And that's what we will do. Now, Exodus chapter 1, verse 1. And it reads, Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. That's Jacob, who is Israel, and all his sons and daughters, which makes up the congregation of Israel or the nation of Israel. Same thing, just different words. What it simply means is a family, a bloodline of people. All right. And then as you continue to read, it lists all the names, and you will see all those people in here are connected by bloodline. Very simple. Go read Chronicles. Okay. Go read Numbers when you get a chance. Now, let's go to Exodus chapter 1, and we'll read verse 16. We're still in Exodus chapter 1. Move down to verse 16. And verse 16 reads, And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, okay, Hebrew, keep in mind, the house of Israel are Hebrews. All the sons of Abraham are Hebrews. But we're dealing specifically with one bloodline, okay? And so these are Hebrew people. They're not Christian people. They're not Muslim people. They're not our Seventh-day Adventist people. They're not Buddhist people. They're not Rastafarian people. They're Hebrew people. Take note of that. Verse 16, let's reread that. And he said, When ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, that's the birth stools. If it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So Pharaoh had passed a decree. These Hebrews, didn't say these Christians, didn't say these Rastafarians, didn't say these Muslims, didn't say these Buddhists, didn't say these Hindus, didn't say these Americans, didn't say these Brits or Germans. He said these Hebrews. All right. If they're to have a son, the Pharaoh said to kill him. But the daughters, let them live. I'm coming here to make a point to you. The son, a man, has a scrotum, has two seeds in it. The man carries that lineage. You understand? He is the sperm carrier. He has two seeds. He carries the seed line. So if you kill the males, you kill the seed line. Now, with that said, you men of Israel, you should clearly understand a few things as it pertains to your seed. And you're to teach this to your children, your sons, who carries your seed. Number one, it is holy seed. Number two, the holy seed should not be corrupted. They are not to marry strange women. They are to marry women of the house of Israel. To marry strangers is an egregious sin. So you're to teach your sons that they are to protect the holy seed. That's number one. Also, there's a reason why you're being shot down in the street. You're being incarcerated in mass numbers. And affliction has befallen the men of Israel. Because if they can eliminate you, they can eliminate your seed line. Hope you understand that. So, to protect yourself from these stripes, these afflictions and hardship, we are to turn with our whole heart and our whole soul to the Most High and His strict commandment and obey them. So I brought you here so you understand clearly why this decree was passed by the Pharaoh. If I kill the boys, I kill the seed line. You understand? So I hope that resonates with you. So you understand you are to protect the seed line, and you're to teach your children, especially your males, that they are the sons of Jacob, and they carry the holy seed, and they are not to pollute it. Now, let's go to Exodus. We're going to go to chapter 2, and we're going to go to verse 25. Exodus chapter 2, verse 25. And it reads, Exodus chapter 2, verse 25. Verse 25 reads, And Yah looked upon the children of Israel. He didn't look upon the Rastafarians, the Muslims, or the Hindus, or the Christians, or the Americans, or the Canadians, or the Germans, or the Russians. He looked upon the children, the offspring, the posterity, the seed line, the DNA direct descendants of Israel. And Yah had respect unto them. You hear Yah don't, the Most High doesn't respect persons. Yes, He does. We just read right here, He had respect unto the children of Israel. You will never read where He had respect unto anyone else. However, the Most High does not have respect unto anyone in judgment. When you come before Him, whether you are His priest, or you are His governor, or you are a poor person, whatever the punishment is, you're going to get it. So there's no respect of persons in judgment. One law goes for the king, the same law applies to the pauper, or the poor person, or the farmer, or anyone else. Okay? All right. Now we will go to Exodus chapter 4, verse 5. Exodus chapter 4, and we will deal with verse 5. And verse 5 reads, That they may believe that the strong one of their fathers The strong one of Abraham, the strong one of Isaac, and the strong one of Jacob had appeared unto thee. So this is the Most High speaking to Moses. He's trying to get Moses to go speak to Pharaoh. But Moses was saying, hey, look, if I go to these Israelites, to the children of Israel, they're going to ask me all kind of questions. Who sent you? And whatever else. So the Most High is strengthening Moshe so that when they ask all these questions, he may do a miracle. He may do something that they have never seen before, so he can convince the house of Israel that, yeah, the Most High did send this Moshe fellow. Okay? So you see here, it says that they may believe that the strong one of their fathers being Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we're saying we're dealing with the descendants of these people. That's why it's saying their fathers. This is all a bloodline. This is not no because I believe all of a sudden I'm an Israelite. This is established through bloodline. Okay, so that is established. On a side note, I've got some side note. Every now and then I put a little side note so you can be edified in certain things. Okay, let's go. Since we're in Exodus chapter 4, I've got some side note things that's unrelated to this lesson that I'm going to make sure that you're able to hear. All right, now dealing with this, let's look at Exodus 4. Let's look at verse 11. And verse 11 reads, And Yah said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I Yah? So Moses was saying, why are you sending me? I am not eloquent. I'm not a good speaker. As a matter of fact, I have a speech impediment. Why are you sending me to the Pharaoh? I don't speak well. It's not a task for me. So the Most High is saying, who made man's mouth? Who made the dumb? Who made the seeing? Who made the blind? Did not I do this? So some of you are caught up in this nonsense when you see evil, see someone killed or murdered. You're thinking, oh, it's the devil, blaspheming the Most High. Your president got elected and you're thinking, oh, like someone else got him in that position. The Most High rules kingdoms, all of them. Whomever you see holding an office in any nation, the Most High put him there. He didn't get there by the devil. He didn't get there by accident. The Most High rules the kingdom of men. So whomever you see as a president, whether you like him or not, hate him or not, the Most High has put him there. You ought to remember that. Now, with that saying, as the Most High made plain to Moshe, I'll make the blind, the deaf, and the dumb. I'll make everyone. You are not to forget that. That's the Most High reminding Moshe. He's responsible for all things. And so what I will do, I will take you to a verse to remind you that the Most High is responsible for everything you see, in spite of what your enemies have told you with these lies. We will go to Isaiah 45, verse 7. Isaiah 45, verse 7. And verse 7 of Isaiah 45 reads, I form the light and create darkness. Light is wisdom, knowledge, understanding, the law. And create darkness. Darkness is evil. For you not to have light, you have darkness. And you will maneuver in darkness when you don't have that law. I make peace and create evil. I, Yah, do all these things. So when you see evil, when you see peace, loving kindness, evil, or anything you see, the Most High does it all. And you are not to blaspheme him with some nonsense. Oh, it's the devil that did this and it's the devil that did that. There ain't no such thing as a devil. It's the Most High doing it all. You have to get that concept in your mind of how powerful this being really is. He does it all. Now, let's go back to Deuteronomy. We're going to go to Deuteronomy 32, and we're going to read verse 39. Deuteronomy 32:39. And verse 39 of Deuteronomy chapter 32 reads, "See now that I," singular, "even I," there's no we here. Most High doesn't have any trinity, he doesn't have any sidekicks. It's him and him alone. Let me reread that. Verse 39 of Deuteronomy chapter 32. "See now that I, even I, am he, and there is no God, lowercase idol, with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand." So when you saw these killings, it's the Most High. When you see someone healing up real good, it's the Most High. He does it all. And there's no sidekicks with him. And there's no son riding with him doing anything. The Most High Son is the nation of Israel, a bloodline of people. So, Exodus 4:11, Isaiah 45:7, and Deuteronomy 32:39, those three were side notes. All right? Since we were in Exodus 4:11 anyway, I figured those side notes would have been a good thing to edify you. Now, we're going to go back to Exodus chapter 4. We're going to read verse 22 and 23. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22 and 23. All right. Exodus 4, verse 22, since we're in Exodus chapter 4 anyhow. Exodus 4:22 reads, "And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith Yah, Israel is my son, even my firstborn." Verse 23, "And I say unto thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn." This commemorates Passover. You have already or should have looked at that video, so you understand clearly the only person that died for you or died on your behalf is a bunch of Egyptians. So you get that clear. No one died for you and went up on some cross in 3 days and no nonsense like that. No such thing as an Easter Sunday. No such thing as a Good Friday. Read Exodus chapter 12. I've made that plain in the video here. Easter, no, no, no. It is y'all's Passover. Okay, so that idol and dying for you, you ought to consider to yourself, if I ate for you, you shouldn't be hungry. So if I died for, if someone, me or anyone died for you, then you should be living forever. But yet, jokers are dropping dead every day, and so will you. No one ever died for you. It's against the Most High's law. That's rubbish also. So keep that in mind. So Israel is the firstborn of the Most High. No one has two firstborn sons. I don't care if you got 1,000 of them. And I don't care if you had a set of twins. Somebody came out first. Israel is the Most High's firstborn. No one trumps that. If you want to know who God's son is, the best person to hear that from would be him. He's speaking to you right here. Take heed of it. Deuteronomy chapter 6. Let's move over to Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 6, and we will read verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4 reads, Hear, O Israel, Yah our strong one is one. This very scripture you should be very familiar with. Okay? The Most High is speaking to this bloodline of people of whom he has a covenant established forever with. Them and their seed throughout all their generations. That bloodline does not change. So Israel was instructed that he is one. This is a family of people. So therefore, what the house of Israel is not to do, what the family of Israel is not to do, is to allow other families of the earth to tell them something otherwise. Because the Most High has never established any covenant with any other family. He made it plain that he only knew one family, and that is the family of Israel. So therefore, the family of Israel should not take heed to anything that any other family of the earth has to say pertaining to the Most High. Something to think about. Okay? Now, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8, we will read verse 22 and 23. All right, correction. Let's not go to, it's not Deuteronomy 8. The correct chapter I would like would be Exodus. Exodus chapter 8, verse 22 and verse 23. Verse 22 and 23 of Exodus chapter 8. Okay? And Exodus chapter 8, verse 22 reads, And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarm of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am Yah in the midst of the earth. Verse 22. And I will put a division between my people, Israel, and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. This is when the Most High is pretty much letting Pharaoh know, look, he's letting him know through Moses that there is a difference between the house of Israel and everyone else. And that he was going to bring flies onto the land of Egypt and he's going to separate his people Israel in Goshen. There will be no flies in Goshen, but there will be flies everywhere else. So there is a division, there's a separation between the house of Israel and any other family on the earth, whether it be Egyptians, Moabites, Ammonites, Canaanites, whomever. There is a very distinct difference, and we are not all the same. All right, now let's go back to Exodus chapter 6, and let's read verse 7 of Exodus chapter 6. Exodus chapter 6, verse 7 reads, And I will take you to me for a people. He is speaking to this bloodline, this genealogy called Israel. Okay? And I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a strong one, or a God. And ye shall know that I am your strong one, which bringeth you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. So the house of Israel, that bloodline, that genealogy, those people who are connected by DNA, by sperm, those people are to know clearly that the Most High is their God, and it is He that brought them forth out of Egypt. Okay? And we are to know that we are His sons and daughters. All right? Now, side note, coming through Exodus, the words get changed around. You will hear the congregation of Israel. It is often used. But whether it be the sons of Jacob, the sons of Israel, the house of Israel, the congregation of Israel, the seed of Israel or the seed of Jacob, it all speaks to one family. that are all connected by bloodline, so you know. Now we have 4 more places to go, and that concludes this lesson. It's been an hour and 34 minutes. But like I always say, it beats some kind of foolish basketball game or football game or some other nonsense that would keep you dumbed down. Now, let's go to Isaiah 66, verse 20. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 20. Isaiah 66, verse 20. In Isaiah 66, verse 20, we will read 20 through 22. And verse 20 reads, "And they shall bring all your brethren." Your brethren is not related to you by belief. They're not related to you spiritually. Your brethren are related to you by bloodline, your brothers. "And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering unto Yah out of all nations, upon horses, and in chariots, and in litters, and upon mules, and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem." So you understand it's by one holy mountain. "Saith Yah, as the children of Israel bringeth an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Yah." So what is being conveyed here is that the enemies of the Most High, who are these nations, they will gather his people out of all the nations where he has scattered them, and they will take us up to Jerusalem. Now, the house of Israel, in the former days, when the temple was up, we took up sacrifices, and the sacrifices had to be in clean vessels. And we would offer up sacrifices by way of the Levite, by way of our priest, to the Most High. So just like we used to take sacrifices up to the temple so that we can be forgiven of our sins, so will these nations gather us up and take us up to the holy mountain and offer us as an atonement for their sins, to save their own lives and the lives of their children, of their seed. So that's what this is speaking of. Verse 21, "And I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith Yah." So once we are taken back into the land by these many nations, they've got to gather us up, take us before the Most High, and offer us as a peace offering. "Oh, Most High, here's your people. We apologize, spare our lives and the lives of our loved ones." Now, that's what these nations are going to have to do. Now, with that said, I want you to understand something. If I went to my local post office, stuck the place up, shot a few people, opened a few packages, whether I hold that post office for 6 minutes, 6 months, or 600 years, when the cops come, what I'm not allowed to do, I can't just put my gun down or my guns down and say, you know what, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to do that. I apologize. And then just go back to my house. It just doesn't work that way. Even if I am of a contrite spirit and I'm indeed remorseful for killing those people and for holding hostage that place for whatever length of time and opening and stealing a few packages, though I may be of a contrite spirit and may be sincere in my apologies, I still have to pay. I still have to go to jail. So what I want you to understand here is, though these nations may take us up to the holy mountain and offer us in the same manner as we would offer up a sacrifice and plead for forgiveness, though they do this and they will be of a contrite spirit that does this, you still got to pay for what you've done. So you understand that. Now, verse 21 reads, once we are taken up to his holy mountain, then the Most High said he will take of us for Levites. You look on YouTube, you see some Israelites who lack understanding, calling themselves priest this, high priest that, priest this and priest that. They're all over YouTube, dressed up looking like... Anyway, they're out here. The Most High said when we return back to this land, he's going to pick our priest because he knows who those bloodlines are. So you have individuals who are claiming to be priests such and such, and they cannot prove their genealogy that they are of the house of Levi, let alone the sons of Aaron. To add to that point, most of them don't know who their daddy is. Yeah, most of them don't know who their father is. And that's their father, let alone their grandfather, or being able to trace back their lineage back to Aaron. Most of our men don't even have an idea who their fathers are. And that's a shameful thing. So these individuals, these men running around claiming to be priest this and priest that, they're incorrect, for the simple fact that once we are returned by the heathen to the land, to the holy mountain of the Most High, he will pick our Levites because he knows who they are. We are scattered in the midst of these nations. Our heritage was removed. Our memories were removed. We don't know who we are, let alone what tribe we belong to. So any man claiming to be a Levite, he has to wait, and we have to wait until we return, and the Most High will pick from the midst of us who our Levites are, because he knows. That's for your edification, so that you may know that. Now, Isaiah 61 verse 9. Isaiah 61, and we will read verse 9. And verse 9 of Isaiah 61 reads, and their seed shall be known among the Gentiles. That's the nations. And their offspring, children, direct bloodline, genealogy, DNA, shall acknowledge them. Let me reread that. And their seed shall be known among the Gentiles, and their offspring among the people. All that see them shall acknowledge them, that they are the seed which Yah hath blessed. All that see them who? The house of Israel. All the nations are going to look at them and acknowledge that this is the family, this is the seed line, this is the genealogy that the Most High hath blessed. So you understand that. So you're not converting to be an Israelite. You're not a spiritual Israelite. This is my seed line. All right? Now, two more places to go. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus 23. We've got two more places to go, and then we'll wrap it up. Leviticus 23. Leviticus chapter 23, and we will read verse 42 and through verse 44. Leviticus chapter 23. And we'll read verse 42. All right, and all the way from 42 to 44. Now, verse 42 of Leviticus chapter 23 reads, ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelite born shall dwell in booths. Israelite born. You cannot be an Israelite unless you're born that way. You cannot convert and be a spiritual Israelite. I don't care what you believe. Once you take a hold of the Most High's law, if you are a stranger and you take a hold of the Most High law and you sojourn and dwell with the house of Israel, You are still a stranger. You do not become an Israelite because you dwell in the midst of us. You taking a hold of the Most High's covenant doesn't make you an Israelite. It is by bloodline, it is by birth. Verse 43, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths. He made the children of Israel to dwell in booths, not strangers. When I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I am Yah, your strong one. Verse 44, and Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of Yah. So once again, when the Most High is speaking, when Moses is speaking, when these prophets are speaking, they're speaking to the children of Israel, a bloodline of people and no one else. Now, very last stop, Amos chapter 3. Let's go there. Amos chapter 3 is our last stop. And then we will wrap this up. Amos chapter 3, and we'll read verse 1 and 2. Amos chapter 3, verse 1 reads, hear this word that Yah has spoken against you, O children of Israel, O seed of Israel, O family of Israel, same thing, O congregation of Israel, same thing. Against the whole family, this is a family, genetics, bloodline, DNA, offspring, which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. So Israel is a family, a bloodline. And the Most High is saying, of all these families that's on the earth, I only know you. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities. So he's saying, Israel, the Most High is speaking directly. Hear this word that Yah has spoken against you, O house of Israel, against the whole family, DNA, bloodline, everybody related. Against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for your iniquities. In other words, what this is saying is, Israel, I have all my covenants with you. I only know you. I don't have any covenants with any other nation of people. My law has been given to you. So therefore, when you step out of line and don't follow my law, I'm going to punish you for your sins. Because I only gave you my law. And I have separated you and I hold you to a standard above everyone else. Because you are my sons and my daughters. And I hope that makes sense to you. All right, that concludes this lesson. We're looking at, I see it says here 1 hour, 47 minutes. I had to take some breaks in between, some pauses, blow my nose and things like that. I have a terrible chest infection. And the pollen here in South Carolina, it gets me every year, makes me extremely ill. So I haven't done any video in quite some time because I have been sick. And this stuff lasts for about 6 weeks for me and longer. So if you see me sneezing and coughing and hacking and everything else, I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible when doing these videos. But I have been ill, and hence there has been a break in the videos. But I'm still strong in this word. I'm still observing the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And I encourage you, and I hope that these lessons strengthen you to do the same. Let's continue to face Jerusalem, lift our hands in prayer, and give the Most High no rest as we call upon him to ease this affliction and to deliver us from the hands of our enemies. But this will not be done unless we do our part. Our halfway point is to obey his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So this concludes this class. This lesson pertains to the house of Israel, a seed line of people, and there is no such thing as spiritual Israel or a spiritual Israelite. There is no such thing. This is established with a bloodline of people. Period. End of story. So all the books and the verses and the scrolls that we have gone through with this lesson, it was all to establish for those who are listening and for those who have read through these scriptures that we have covered over the last 1 hour and 49 minutes. is so you clearly understand that there is no such thing as spiritual Israel, that the house of Israel is a family connected by genealogy. It has always been that way, and it will always be that way. And a spiritual Israelite, or we're all Israel and spiritual Israel, is nothing but a lie. The house of Israel is a family separated from everyone else on the face of the earth. This is what the Most High has said. So if we are to adhere to the Most High's law, that's what we're to subscribe to. Now, anyone that gives you counsel contrary to that, you're not to follow it, because we are not to disregard the counsel that we were given, you guessed it, at the first. All right, Israel, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, thy law, and thy law is the truth. Continue to walk within this law and do the things that are right in the sight of the Most High. Peace and Yah bless.